At a glance, Chapter 16 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo feels like the moment where everything finally explodes. Long-standing tension, buried conflicts, and unanswered questions all collide at once, throwing the story into a brutal and unforgiving battlefield. This chapter doesn't waste time on warm-ups. It immediately drags readers into two high-stakes confrontations that push every character involved to their absolute limits. From the very first pages, it's clear that survival is no longer guaranteed, and every decision carries irreversible consequences. As Dabura clashes with the ever-adapting MAHORAGA and Maru crosses blades with the unpredictable Tsurugi, the narrative escalates far beyond a standard sorcerer showdown. Power systems are challenged, hidden restrictions are exposed, and emotional stakes rise alongside raw destruction. Chapter 16 isn't just about who hits harder. It's about sacrifice, restraint, fear, and the terrifying cost of fighting at the highest level. What unfolds is a turning point that reshapes the direction of the story entirely. Oh yeah, so we can keep interacting and making the anime storytelling world even more fun together, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments to keep the vibe going. Alright guys, let's jump straight into the discussion. Let's go. This time, we're diving into the official review of Chapter 16 of the Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo manga, a chapter that is absolutely insane and packed with non-stop tension. In this chapter, two long-awaited major battles finally begin. Dabura versus MAHORAGA, and Maru facing Tsurugi. These are not ordinary fights by any means. Each duel operates on extreme level of power, strategy, and danger. So without wasting any time, let's break everything down step by step. Chapter 16 is titled Light with Killing Intent, a name that directly reflects the power Dabura demonstrated in the previous chapter. As the story opens, we're given a detailed explanation of the 10 Shadows technique, a hereditary technique of the Sennin clan, one of the 3 ancient great clans. This technique allows its user to summon Shikigami by using shadows as a medium. However, in the modern era, this technique is considered forbidden within the Goyo clan. As a result, Okatsu YUKA is only permitted to use a limited version of it, borrowing abilities from a few Shikigami rather than fully wielding the technique. This leads into the introduction of the most dangerous entity within the 10 Shadows technique, Divine General MAHORAGA, the bearer of 8 swords and a command mandala. Among the 10 Shikigami, MAHORAGA is the only one considered truly impossible to subdue. Throughout history, the only known individual to have ever conquered it was Fushiguro Megumi, and even then, only while his body was possessed by Rime and Sukuna. In battle, MAHORAGA is summoned through a forced exorcism ritual, a process that directly involves the opponent as part of the ritual itself. In this case, the participants of the ritual are Okatsu YUKA and Dabura Kuraba. It is revealed that YUKA is currently in a state of delayed death. The ritual will only end if Dabura Kuraba is killed or if MAHORAGA is completely destroyed. In either outcome, Yuka's death will become permanent and unavoidable. This revelation makes it clear that Yuka's chances of survival are extremely slim. Still, there remains a faint glimmer of hope centered on Itadori, who previously managed to stop Megumi's delayed death. In theory, Itadori should be capable of doing the same for Yuka, making him the final hope left in this situation. The story then returns to the battlefield. As seen in the previous chapter, Dabura had already pierced MAHORAGA's body with a powerful attack. However, at that moment, the wheel above MAHORAGA's head begins to rotate, signaling its adaptation. Dabura releases an overwhelming aura. Though he appears calm, it's clear he's shocked that his attack wasn't enough to finish MAHORAGA. MAHORAGA quickly retaliates, launching a barrage of rapid punches toward Dabura. Dabura manages to endure the assault, but MAHORAGA follows up with a devastating kick that sends him flying. Dabura skillfully braces himself with his left arm against nearby buildings before counterattacking with a massive light-based blast from his right hand. Dabura's design and fighting style truly stand out here. His light attacks are both brutal and elegant. This time, instead of firing multiple smaller beams, he condenses all his power into a single colossal beam that strikes MAHORAGA head-on. The result is devastating. MAHORAGA loses its right arm and a large portion of its body. But as expected, that still isn't enough. MAHORAGA's wheel spins once more, signaling further adaptation. Dabura continues pressing the attack, ripping chunks of nearby buildings and hurling them at MAHORAGA. Yet MAHORAGA catches them barehanded and crushes them with terrifying physical strength, once again proving it is no ordinary Shikigami. At this point, Dabura begins to analyze the situation. He realizes that MAHORAGA isn't just a summoned creature. Like cursed spirits, this Shikigami appears to be a part of the Earth's energy system itself. These beings aren't mere puppets fighting on behalf of sorcerers. They're living entities with their own unique abilities. An epic moment follows as MAHORAGA stands tall before Dabura, completely regenerated from its previous injuries. Before the falling debris even hits the ground, both fighters vanish, signaling that the battle has resumed at extreme speed. Dabura unleashes another light attack, this time with the intent to completely eradicate MAHORAGA. A direct strike to MAHORAGA's head obliterates its upper body. Yet once again, MAHORAGA survives. The wheel turns. Adaptation continues. The fight grows increasingly brutal. Dabura lands a double kick to MAHORAGA's face and fires countless light beams from the soles of his feet. The sheer volume of attacks obliterates multiple buildings in the area. Despite the overwhelming force, MAHORAGA remains standing. This is when Dabura finally understands the pattern. MAHORAGA is actively adapting to his techniques. Every rotation of the wheel represents another evolution, allowing it to counter the next attack. As the most valuable treasure of the Sennin clan, MAHORAGA possesses an absolute ability, adaptation to any form of attack, making it the deadliest countermeasure ever created. With that realization, the first battle comes to a temporary halt, leaving a powerful impression that this duel exists at the absolute highest level. The story then shifts to the second fight, Maru versus Tsurugi. As previously mentioned, this is a sword duel. The two immediately clash blades. Tsurugi recognizes Maru's proficiency with a sword, to which Maru responds that the blade belongs to Kurosu. Tsurugi takes the initiative, breaking the clash and attacking. Maru blocks and attempts to move behind Tsurugi, only to be caught off guard when Tsurugi is already prepared to counter. This forces Maru to begin analyzing his opponent. Tsurugi possesses no cursed energy and no sorcery techniques. Instead, he has been granted overwhelming physical power through a heavenly restriction. Because he lacks energy flow, his movements cannot be read. Every strike feels like a surprise attack, making it extremely difficult for Maru to adapt. This problem is made worse by the fact that Tsurugi can still use sorcery through his cursed tool, a katana. Maru initially believes the sword is merely an aid, but it turns out the weapon has its own stored energy, depending on its quality. Tsurugi's combat rhythm is completely different from that of ordinary sorcerers. He manages to injure Maru's face and gradually dominates the fight. Maru is unable to match Tsurugi's raw physical strength and is eventually knocked to the ground. Tsurugi then states that the only thing that truly matters is Dabura leaving Earth. If Dabura were to depart, the ritual threatening Yuka's life would automatically be cancelled. However, Maru explains that Dabura cannot return to Cimmeria due to a curse binding him. Even if Dabura left on his own, the Discount clan leader's technique could still reach him and reactivate the curse. Tsurugi then proposes a decisive duel. If Tsurugi wins, everyone must leave Earth. As a warrior, Maru cannot refuse. At that moment, Tsurugi activates a simple domain using a technique called Circle. The chapter ends with a flashback of Maru recalling Dabura's words from an earlier battle. "You're holding back. You're not fighting with your full strength." Maru finally understands what those words meant. He apologizes to Dabura and admits that he truly gets it now. After nearly losing his brother, that fear resurfaces, this time driven by the possibility of losing a friend. Maru no longer wants to see anyone hurt, let alone die. For a moment, it seems as though he may retreat and regret continuing the fight against Tsurugi. But everything changes when his third eye suddenly speaks. The cold voice mocks him, questioning his pride as a warrior. That ridicule ignites Maru's resolve. His gaze sharpens, and he responds to Tsurugi with absolute conviction, declaring that he will fight with killing intent, daring Tsurugi not to die so easily. Not long after that, something completely beyond logic occurred. Tsurugi moved as if rotating 90 degrees within an impossible space, as though reality itself had been flipped upside down. From his perspective, the sky and the ground seemed to switch places. At that moment, the truth was finally revealed. Maru and Kurosu's techniques represent chaos and harmony in their purest forms. The episode closed with a powerful line. The wrath of the cosmos itself had begun to strike. Honestly, this chapter feels both brutal and incredibly engaging. There's so much to unpack, especially regarding the main battles. From the very beginning, we finally learn that Yuka has been fighting under heavy restrictions all this time. This explains why he never fully utilized his Shikigami. However, these limitations feel somewhat illogical. Aside from MAHORAGA, which is undeniably dangerous, the other Shikigami are essentially standard tools for a sorcerer. Take the Shikigami dogs, for example. They are a default part of the technique, consistently reliable, and have never posed any serious threat. This makes the restriction feel less like a safety measure and more like a deliberate attempt to suppress Yuka's growth. It is highly likely that the Goyo clan wanted to prevent Yuka from becoming too powerful, perhaps even strong enough to escape their control. This reasoning also explains why Rika was taken from him. If Yuka still had Rika, there's a strong chance he could master nearly all of the shadow techniques. MAHORAGA might still be uncertain, but imagine him controlling the other 9 shadows. Yuka's power would reach a terrifying level, potentially making him the strongest sorcerer of the current era. And that is precisely what the clan seems determined to prevent. The problem is that this decision may backfire. In the current battle, Yuka appears to be in a state of delayed death. No matter who wins, Dabura or MAHORAGA, Yuka's fate looks grim. The probability of his death feels overwhelmingly high, almost inevitable. At this point, Yuka has only 2 possible lifelines. First, if Itadori arrives just in time to save him. Second, if Mahito intervenes. We know Mahito is still active behind the scenes, and he is one of the few figures capable of healing Yuka, though that help would undoubtedly come at a terrible cost. The only way Mahito would assist is likely through a binding vow, possibly involving Tsurugi. This makes Mahito's involvement increasingly suspicious. During Maru's fight with Tsurugi, Maru's third eye clearly influenced his emotions, pushing him to fight without restraint. It is difficult not to suspect that this eye has malicious intent, or that it may already be under Mahito's influence. That third eye is connected to the Cursed World, so it makes sense that Mahito could already be moving his pieces. Remember when Ozuki claimed to hear strange voices? It is entirely possible that Mahito has been manipulating events from the shadows for quite some time, exploiting the fragile state of the Amurians. If Mahito is indeed present near the Tsurugi versus Maru battlefield, the situation could become far darker. Should Tsurugi emerge victorious, Mahito might negotiate Yuka's survival in exchange for something horrific, perhaps turning Tsurugi into a vessel, or something even worse. Shifting to the battle between Dabura and MAHORAGA, Dabura has finally begun to understand his opponent's adaptive ability, though it may be too late. His repeated light-based attacks are no longer effective, and moving forward, such attacks will likely be completely useless. Dabura's only remaining option is to unleash an overwhelmingly destructive attack using a different technique. History has shown that MAHORAGA can only be defeated by truly lethal moves, such as SUKUNA's Flames or Gojo's Hollow Purple. Dabura must use his ultimate technique and ensure MAHORAGA has no chance to adapt. an incredibly difficult task. It is very likely that in the next chapter, MAHORAGA will begin overwhelming Dabura and even injure him. Even if Dabura is ultimately predicted to win, this battle will not end cleanly. The damage and exhaustion he suffers will likely be immense. Unfortunately, YUKA can no longer contribute anything to this fight. MAHORAGA stands alone, and its chances of victory continue to diminish. Meanwhile, the duel between Maru and Tsurugi has officially escalated into a fight to the death. The revelation of chaos and harmony techniques drastically raises the scale of the battle. With these abilities in play, Tsurugi's chances of winning grow increasingly slim. Despite possessing a heavenly restriction, Tsurugi has not fully maximized its potential. If that restriction were truly perfect, the battle should have ended from the very start. As Maru stated, the key for heavenly restriction users lies in the opening strike. If they fail to finish the fight immediately, their advantage gradually fades away. And that is exactly what seems to be happening. Maru has begun reading Tsurugi's combat patterns. With chaos and harmony in play, Tsurugi has almost no room left to win. His only remaining hope may be Rika. There is a possibility that Rika's ring is still in Tsurugi's possession. If that is the case, summoning Rika could shift the balance of the fight. We might even see a scenario where both siblings fight with support. MAHORAGA on one side, Rika on the other. All of these possibilities remain open. Now, we simply wait to see when Itadori finally appears on one of the battlefields. With Mahito's potential involvement, the intensity of the story is bound to rise dramatically. So the conclusion is, overall, Chapter 16 stands out as one of the most intense and layered entries in Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo so far. It masterfully balances spectacle with narrative depth, revealing how political control, forbidden techniques, and personal fears all intertwine on the battlefield. Yuka's grim fate, Dabura's struggle against absolute adaptation, and Maru's awakening through chaos and harmony all signal that the story is entering a far darker phase. With Mahito's shadow looming and Itadori still absent, the tension feels unresolved in the best way possible, setting the stage for a catastrophic escalation where no victory will come without a devastating price. Thank you so much for sticking with the story till the end. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down in the comments section below. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.